Let's start back your time here. Just left a few years ago. What sticks out to you about your time at WREX?
I mean, we covered some of the biggest sports stories in the generation in the 6 years that I was there. You had the Cubs winning the World Series for the first time in 108 years, the Blackhawks continuing their dynasty in 2015, winning the Stanley Cup, a Rockford native making it all the way to the National Football League, not that far away from where he grew up, with Dean Lowry going to Green Bay. But the icing on the cake was Fred VanVleet and the Raptors winning the NBA championship in 2019. To cover the trajectory of his college and professional career, I got there right after he left high school. Seeing him dominate at Wichita State, go undrafted, and we were at that draft night party, and I watched his dad take the phone call getting that summer league invite, and then to see him become an NBA champion with the Toronto Raptors. Then he becomes an all-star. Then he signs a massive free agent contract with Houston Rockets. Seeing and knowing what he's been through, how important Rockford was to him, and to see him achieve something that some of the all-time greats in the sport have never done before was really special. And then to see the city embrace him, it basically became a Raptor city overnight. That was by far the most memorable experience I had as a sports anchor and reporter there. It's hometown pride at the highest level. It was really great.
Yeah, those Jurassic Park Rockfords really stick out. Those are like burned in the memory, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think I was there when they lost one of the games in the finals, but to see fans living and dying with every basket, and then living and dying even more when Fred had the ball in his hands, was unreal. And then to see him not only win the title, but to have an instrumental role in the clinching game. I think he had 22 points off the bench against a Golden State team that was coming off of a dynastic run, was amazing. And the images of him winning the finals, the post-game interview where he shouts out his hometown, those are things that people who saw it and are from Rockford are never going to forget. And I helicoptered into Rockford for 6 years, but you really got the sense of how special that was for everybody who is from there and still lives there, or people who are from there and don't live there anymore, and they say, that's our guy. It was really great.
And yeah, just being a part of WREX for those 6 years. I mean, it was quite the time for you to come in and, as you say, helicopter, and it was quite an era of sports success here.
Yeah, and even just thinking on all of the high school sports success that you and I covered for 6 years, multiple state championships and champions in individual sports and team sports, and just building this sports department together was really great. And people love their local sports in all the small towns that we cover, and just getting to meet these people and tell all of those stories about all of these athletes and teams was terrific. Friday night football was the best. Every Friday night in the fall was the best, whether you're covering 2 games, covering 4 games in one night, and then you turn it up a dial in the postseason and you're covering 4 or 5 games in a given day on a weekend, and then turning it into a full-blown high school playoff show where you can't get that anywhere else. That's what was great about working at 13 at the high school level. We were giving viewers something that they could not get anywhere else. And you really got the sense as you went around town and met and talked to people that it meant a lot to them. And who knows how many of those kids are going to continue playing in college, professionally. Some of them are only going to play sports for that little amount of time in high school. And they were on TV because we were there and we were covering them doing amazing things. So that was really special. And FNF was a joy for 6 seasons. It was amazing. Every single week in the fall. It was great.
Yeah, you kind of touched on that, just how meaningful it is. Like, people, they watch the local news and they get vested in it, right? They really care. They take pride in seeing themselves and seeing their communities kind of spotlighted, and that's something that we in turn then take pride in spotlighting them, right?
Yeah, and you go to Byron, Illinois, Lena, Illinois, these tiny towns that quite literally shut down on a Friday night or a Saturday. I always made the joke that the best time to rob a bank in one of these small towns was on a Friday night from kickoff until the final whistle. Forreston, covering the NUIC, the Nick 10, the Big Northern. I've been away from it for a few years now, and I could probably still name every team in every conference, maybe some of the coaches that are still there. But you really felt it when you were there. Everyone was so proud of their teams, the players. And the other thing was, too, is that everyone was present even when their teams lost. I remember covering state championships where our teams didn't come out on top, and fans and families were still so proud. That was cool too, and you don't get that everywhere. Northern Illinois is a pretty special place because there's some great programs and great communities that we cover, and we took pride in the product too. We knew that our footage was valuable. We knew that when we had a valuable touchdown, dunk, buzzer beater, we treated that like gold. And, I remember right before I left, we got Eastland women's basketball into the top 10 on SportsCenter. And I remember the second I shot that buzzer beater, I thought to myself, I got to get this online as fast as humanly possible. And we hustled it back to the station, put it on social media. A producer at ESPN saw it, and they aired it on the top 10 that night. And that made that town's decade, probably. Like, when are they ever going to get on the top 10 on ESPN? And to be the reason that we made that happen was really, really special.
Then they got to go to Applebee's to celebrate, right? Afterward.
Just throwing out Applebee's, and then they go and celebrate. Like, that's the little stuff that is organically made and done in local news. And that's why it's still so important that people support their local news operations, and by extension, their local sports departments as well. Because, again, if you love high school athletics as much as you do, you're not going to get it anywhere else other than your local television station.
The funny thing is, with that team, Erin Hensey, their star player, ended up interning with us 3 years later. So
isn't that wild? Isn't that wild? She won the state championship in girls basketball that year, and now she's working for us. And it's really funny talking to people who have grown up there, and they see a lot of change in their communities, on their television stations, but the people that have grown up there and have lived there as long as they have, that's what makes a small community so great, is that people don't leave and they plant roots down. And I was very proud to have been there for 6 years, which is a long time for a local sports town. But I felt a pull in Rockford, and what made me so sad is that I left it right at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I didn't really have a chance to say goodbye to a lot of people. And I obviously understood why, but there were a lot of people that I wanted to thank for making my time in Rockford so terrific. And I hope you include this. One of the best memories I have of working at 13 was a year into my tenure. The student section at Rockford Lutheran made me their theme for one of their boys basketball games that night. That photo is something that I still show people, and they look at me and ask me, how in the world did you pull that off? And I really give them an honest answer. I developed relationships, and when you show up, people notice. And those kids notice and throw on their punched out 3D glasses and put on their shirts and ties and made a fake desk out of cardboard boxes. It's one of my proudest moments working in TV. And I just showed up and busted out laughing. It was unreal that those kids did that. And that was, we're talking about this 8 years after it happened. It's an indelible memory.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I remember, I think our news crew was maybe in Dixon or somewhere that night doing that Where You Live segment or something, and we all got some special glasses too to put on.
Yeah. By the way, watch out, happening later tonight. Yeah, that was wild.
Yeah, super fun. Let's see. Yeah, any other stories that jump out to you that you're especially proud of, or anything like that, or any other connections that you made that you feel are worth mentioning?
Yeah, the athletes of the week that we did, some of the stories that we were able to pull out of the shadows and pull out of the stands and bring under the spotlight were really neat. And not all of them were happy go lucky stories. And so to put a spotlight on some special kids, some of whom overcame some pretty unfortunate and awful circumstances and were able to perform under the lights in the gym, was really, really terrific. Um, we covered and were around some pretty sad and unfortunate things, and then to see communities come together and athletes perform when they would otherwise be grieving something at home was really, really, really inspiring. I remember, if I get the name wrong, you can edit it out. There was a Boylan defensive lineman, Noah Hickox, who lost his father unexpectedly and had a game a few nights later. And he had a pick six and his team won the game. I mean, that is like Brett Favre Monday Night Football level inspirational performance that was truly a privilege to be present for and capture on camera. And I get chills, like, still thinking about it. And to testify to those things and bring that into people's living rooms was something that I think you and I took seriously, but we didn't take ourselves too seriously. We like to have fun, and I think we still have a whole catalog of inside jokes, but we took our jobs seriously. And I think people really respected that from the two of us when we worked together for 6 years. Because, I mean, not to make a sports metaphor, but when you show up to a game in a moving billboard and you wear the jacket, like, that means something. Like, you're representing the news organization and you're there to capture whatever happens. And you never know what's going to happen. You could see a 6-0 defensive slugfest or a 45-42 thriller that comes down to the last play. And that's why sports are important, and that's why sports are so great, because you never know what's going to happen, and it brings small communities together. And to be able to capture that in any sport was something that I'm still very proud of.
Yeah, and I'm proud to have worked with you for those 6 years, man, and your time at WREX.
The feeling is mutual. I would not trade it for anything. And again, we got to cover some of the biggest stories that might not ever happen again, especially in that compressed of a time frame. So we were pretty lucky, but you got to be lucky and good. So
You got to put in the work, and like you said, show up to these events to actually be there and cover them properly.
Yeah, 100%. And getting my first TV job at 13 is something that I am still very grateful for. And again, I wouldn't trade it for anything.